Well, 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 here we are again for another episode of Pain. I'd say nice to see you, but Nobara can't see anything. I hate it here. And yet, I am still joined by my friends.
And here we are again when nobody had to know. Back before we lost Nobara. That was a Taylor Swift reference, by the way. If you couldn't tell from the Swiftie of the show, it's me, ya boy, and I'm back.
You know, it's not quite zero. I would cry during this episode, but it's not more. It's not like much more than zero. So,
Also, just like Nobara.
Brings a hole to my eye.
oh my god.
That is foul. Oh no. Oh, okay. All right. Let's just start. Let's just get into it once again. All I know is pain. I can never have what I want. We saw what happened briefly to Nobara at the end of last week's episode. This week, of course, does what it needs to drive the blade deeper. So we open up and we're greeted with a flashback scene, despite where the episode had ended last week. In this flashback scene, we see Yuji, Nobara, and Megumi goofing around after they accidentally spill coffee on a very expensive shirt belonging to Gojo. What did you think of this flashback scene and how it was placed here at the beginning of the episode?
I mean, this is a common anime thing to like throw those flashbacks and then be like, they're dead. No, it was really cute though. I was laughing and giggling at their little antics and also at the price tag of the shirt and just how much they were like, and then Gojo's like, what you doing there? Megumi's got it hidden in his shirt. It was so cute and so funny. And I was like, why am I laughing? Because they're so cute. But all I know is pain, so.
Yeah, I think this was definitely a tough scene to watch because it gives you that like further exposition of like these people like got really close and it's so hard to see them separate now, especially knowing that it wasn't just like these antics that they went through, but everything that they went through in season 1 was a part of kind of their bond forging. And it's always like these moments. I think this kind of parallels, and I think we'll talk about parallels from this anime, but Naruto does a lot of like flashbacks before a big moment. And so I think that this is one of those moments where they're going to like flashback, slap it back on.
Yeah. I think it's funny though too. It's I don't know. I think that we're seeing the flashbacks also from like Yuji's POV, even though like technically it's the audience POV. We're not seeing it from any one character's eyes, but this is the character that's just been confronted with what has just happened to Nobara immediately. And so it's interesting to me that like instead of something that's a little bit more melancholy, like what we had seen from Nobara's friend in the last episode, where they're remembering like how Nobara was kind of like the hometown hero and like her savior from like the other bullies that were in the town. Like this is more like Yuji's memory of her. And like the thing that comes to his mind immediately is them being like a group of village idiots in front of Gojo and just like so it's interesting to me that that's what's contrasted with what comes immediately to follow. It's pretty rough. We don't get any time to rest at all here because we cut immediately to a POV shot of Yuji from Nobara's empty eye socket. They did not need to do that to us. That was not in the manga. I don't know.
Yeah, I think as Emily says, sometimes they embellish on things in the manga. This was not embellishment. I think this was just torture. We already understood that she died. And it's like every anime does this because it's a weekly running show. So you gotta be like, okay, like what happened last week? And like as I'm watching Black Clover, I have to skip like the first like 4 minutes of the show because it's like I already know what happened and binging the show. But like they didn't need to do that to us. Like, of course, they're going to give you a different POV each time you start a new episode and as it recaps what's before it. But like this was over the top. And I bet you they like called up Gege and were like, "Hey, we have this idea. What do you think?" And we're assuming Gege is a she. That's just this assumption of the show. But Gege is a she, and like she was like, "On point, sis. Go for it."
Gege would totally be like, yeah. throw some more salt in the wound. I should have gone meaner.
Nobody hates Jujutsu Kaisen characters more than Gege Akutami.
I was not prepared for it. First of all, like the going straight from the flashback to the close up of her entire face from Yuji's point of view was just like that took me aback. And then like the empty eye socket POV. Why? Why would you do that? Because it's like she's dead. She's like, this is not anyone's POV because she's not seeing this. Like her eye is gone. Why? I hate it here.
I also hate it here. And yet we continue and we move on and we keep watching. And as much as I hate it here, this has like been a really incredible season of television. So as much as I am unhappy with it, I am happy with it. But we're going to move away now from the empty eye socket because that was foul. And speaking of things that are foul, we need to talk about Mahito here for a minute. Sorry, Brian. But Mahito is pretty pleased with himself, seeing Yuji's spirit finally break here. And so he starts to like kind of wail on him. He's even landing some like black flashes because poor sweet Yuji is so broken after losing Nobara and Nanami. And also seeing Gojo get sealed. Mahito mocks him, saying that like all the sorcerers, like including Yuji, came in entirely unprepared. He insinuates that they thought it was just going to be a fight here when really it's a war or a battle of truths. And as he's like talking about how they're fighting for their ideals, I just am again struck by how interesting it is that his name is Mahito, meaning like true human in Japanese. But I don't know. What did you think of this dialogue?
I think any story where there's good and evil to the audience, it's good to have this dialogue where it's like you can truly see why the people that we see as villains are fighting for like what they believe. Now that being said, I never once am on Mahito's side here because he's like excited to be, what did he call himself? Like the true devil, or like I'm a true curse or something along those lines, I think. So he just wants to wreak havoc and he has fun with it. Like he's just like truly evil. But you know, we already talked a few episodes ago about how like all the others that we've seen, you know, like Jogo and Hanami, where like they genuinely were fighting for what they believed to be correct and like for saving the world, or you know, that sort of thing. Even Geto like just went really extreme on his ideals. So I think this dialogue just kind of goes along with it, but while he's doing it, he's absolutely beating Yuji to a pulp. And I just like, there's, no matter what your ideals are, when you're taking someone who just witnessed 2 deaths of people very close to them, plus like not knowing how to get Gojo out of the situation, it's like, you know, kicking a dying animal. Like you just, that's like it's one of the most evil things that you can do. And to see Yuji just like not be able to fight back was really tough. I think that many times in these situations we see characters get really angry and tap into like a new strength or whatever, and that's kind of what I was expecting. So to see him just completely destroy Yuji was like really, really tough for me since I didn't know what was coming.
Oh, this dialogue. This dialogue gets me because it's kind of true. He's talking about how they came in entirely unprepared, and might I say they were? Like, I think they had no idea that there was going to be this many things go wrong in one spot at the same time. So I think that that's kind of where to start. Now, Mahito, you brought up Mahito being named like true human, or I just saw The Boy and the Heron. Fantastic, by the way. Loved it. But in the movie, the English translation of the character's name, the main character is also named Mahito, and it was named a sincere one. And I think I like that translation just a little bit better because I think it comes and speaks to exactly kind of what Hannah is saying in an inverse direction, that Mahito also thinks what he is doing is completely right. And I think that's what's the most interesting about that is Mahito believes he is being sincere by telling them that this was a war and you came prepared for a battle. Like it's just as simple as that. So I think that this was really interesting. I think it caused a lot of stirring emotions in me, especially because like I like Mahito, but also Mahito's a total piece of trash. So that whatever that says about me, hey, it is what it is.
You really couldn't have two characters named Mahito that are like any more different than the one featured here, and then the one, of course, in Miyazaki's awesome new movie. Highly recommend. But yeah, I mean, there's like another note in the dialogue too, where he goes on to say like, "I bet you never even thought about like how many curses you killed, Yuji. Like, why would you? It's just like another thing that you do." He's like, "I feel the same way about humans," and I think it's hard for us to sympathize with that because obviously we belong to the other side of the camp, assuming that this was real, and also just like in standing beside our probably favorite characters in the show and who we think we're rooting for at least as the good guys. But he's kind of got a point. Like if the main characters were flipped and it was like the curses that we were seeing, we probably would be rooting in a similar way because it would be like all these curses are getting taken out, getting soloed by people like Gojo and all these other sorcerers. So it's like if you were rooting for that side, like they're winning. And so history's written by the winners. That's what they say anyway. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting dialogue for sure, and I would agree, Brian, that they were completely unprepared. I don't know that there'd ever been a coordinated attack like this in Jujutsu history to the same degree. Like we saw a little bit in Zero, but again, this is, I think, more complex, more curses rather than like deviant human sorcerers. And so maybe they just didn't even realize that a coordinated attack could happen on a level like what's happening in Shibuya right now. So literally unprecedented, and perhaps why it is called the Shibuya incident, which we have learned is a very loose English translation, but really means almost more like Hurricane Katrina or like some huge crazy event involving like mass loss of life in a particular area. So not good.
Here comes the hurricane. Shibuya, 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 Shibuya.
I didn't know what to expect. I really thought maybe it was going to be Hurricane Tortilla, but
Hurricane Shibuya? More like Hurricane Tortilla.
Hurricane Yowaimo. It's funny, except that everybody we love is dead.
Oh.
So, but there is one beam of light shining through the darkness that comes right in here. Finally, we hear a clap. And this is another one of my favorite characters in the show. I like audibly cheered when he finally came on the screen. We have one of our boys from the Kyoto school here, Todo, is here to save the day. And on the internet, before the episode had aired, there were a lot of people that were worried the translation of this line wouldn't hit as hard as it did in the manga, but I personally think that it slapped. The line goes something like, the prosperous have no choice but to decline, but we are the exception. And it's such a cool line, and it's such a cool entrance, and I was so happy to see him again. What were your thoughts when Todo came back on the screen?
Well, you see, as I said in the group chat, there are things that I'd like to see him clap other than his hands. Now, that is one thing to say. However, literally, this man is amazing. Oi Todo, as Noah said. Just like his own hype machine. Really, I love the fact that this man can walk into a room and literally hype himself off of like fumes alone. It's literally amazing, and it's so inspirational.
I have been waiting for this entrance because he has been in the OP, and I'm like, where the heck is he? Where the heck is Kyoto School? Like, they gotta show up at some point, and oh my gosh, did his entrance not disappoint. I love him, and I'll be honest, like, it's been a minute since I've, like, seen him because I still haven't rewatched season 1. I'm gonna do that probably over, like, Christmas as we gear up to watch it together, as in Jordan and I, but it was so just satisfying to see him show up and just say some really slapping lines, pun intended. And just, I love him, and he's like, my besto friendo, and I was like, yes! Or he would be like, bruzza. Why did I always laugh because I'm like, why does he just not say like Ototo, like little brother in Japanese? No, he's like bruzza.
My bruzza.
So
Besto friendo. I love him.
He's
I just
like,
imagine like I just imagine these like high school kids in Japan doing that and just like saying random words in English just because they think it's funny. And then like we're over here in America doing the exact same thing with Japanese, and it's just like everyone does it in different countries just for fun.
I love it though. Like so everybody has like a type, right? Like in these animes. And so usually like I am a simple woman. It is usually the same as I think most other people, and it is like the moody dark-haired boy. Of course it is. But as far as the type that I love and would protect with my life, it's the himbo character. And that is absolutely what Todo represents in this show. I mean, and there is one in like almost every anime too. Like we're talking about Black Clover. I love Yami. He's absolutely incredible, but he is a himbo. Maybe, I mean, and when I say himbo, these characters actually are quite smart. It's that they act in goofy ways. And
they are
huge.
really smart on the battlefield and then have one brain cell in every other aspect of life. It's like shuts down any other time.
Like Todo is being like, he's doing the most right now with Yuji here in this moment, but then he's like delivering like this insane monologue of like the prosperous have no choice but to decline, but we are the exception. And he's having like this like he's almost having his Gojo moment here, his like awakening. And we'll talk about this in a little bit, but apparently Todo actually is like supposed to be one of the strongest characters in the show. Like he breaks like the top 5, I think, with his technique and like actual just physical strength. At least at this point in the story. More to touch on later. But I love him. I am so happy to see him. I will take as much of him as I can get because he is just a sweet, huge boy. He doesn't show up alone though. His colleague Arata actually shows up as well, and we learn I can't remember if we've seen this technique before. Admittedly, I need to watch season 1 also, but we get to see a demonstration of the technique again here, and his technique can help in medical situations, so he can help to try to prevent any already received injuries from getting any worse. So he uses the technique on Yuji, who's gotten roughed up in like back-to-back battles, and he's like, you need to be careful because everything you have isn't going to get any worse, but if you get any more, then it's not going to be good. And then he goes on to share that he actually was able to apply the same technique to Nobara as well. And he says that she is most likely going to die and that her heart wasn't beating, or that she wasn't breathing. But the chance of her making it and living also isn't a 0% chance. What do you think that this means? Any theories?
I mean, I don't know why they wouldn't throw in that moment where he says, like, it's not, her chance of surviving is not 0, but she probably will still die. Just the fact that they added that tells me that at some point in the story, she's gonna somehow come back. I would assume, I don't know. I know you guys know a lot more than I do, but there's just, to me, as soon as they made that comment, I was like, okay, so she's probably gonna come back at some point. I mean, we get lots of badass, like, one-eyed characters after a battle, like, throw an eye patch on her, that's the anime way, like, she'll be even cooler. But that's like, my theory. I don't know how she would come back, I don't know. She might just die, like, they were very clear that she very well could still, and that she wasn't breathing at the time, and she looked pretty darn dead at the beginning of the episode, too. Like, that was a dead person, essentially, but I don't think they would add that line if they intended to just never bring her back. So that's my theory. I also like this technique. I think it's interesting, and it was very easy to follow. And it's like, simply put, like, your wounds will not get worse, but Yuji was more than roughed up in this. Like, he was getting the like anime character treatment of, oh my god, you would be dead if you were not an anime character. If you were real life. And there's just like blood everywhere, and he was like essentially dying, so he still needs to be very careful.
I think this is a really cool technique. First off, Nita, right? I think it's cool because it's not OP, right? Like, it's not like all of a sudden like you're getting healed and you're like, I'm back to normal, let's go. Like, that's just like plot armor. But no, like, this is like realistic. Like, this is real combat medic stuff. Like, nah, you need to be careful, bud. You are literally like on the brink of death still. However, you're not going to be any worse. And I think that that's a really cool thing because it gives realistic stakes for the characters. I think it's really important that there's still some sort of consequence for these characters as they go through a fight or whatever. And so I think that that's really interesting. With Nobara, like I said, in the manga, Nobara still hasn't showed up. So that is a very loose end that they have left open. For manga readers out there, let us know what you think. If Nobara is going to come back at some point, try and be non-spoilery if you can. But really, I think at this point, like, there's no way that that's not going to happen because of how they left this, like, open, you know?
Yeah, I would agree. I don't know that I have super specific theories yet, but I do think she's going to come back. I think her technique is too important. And you know, like Brian said, like we genuinely don't know either. That's like not something that's been brought back up, but Gege is also not one to leave a lot of loose ends so far, so I have every confidence that we will get some kind of resolution, and I think that she's going to be key, personally. I think she's going to come, take some names, kick some ass, but not right now. Right now she's in like essentially a suspended state of death because she's not exactly alive, she's not exactly dead. She's only mostly dead. So, we're not going to see her anytime soon right now, but at least it is not 100% funeral time yet. On that note, as Nita is taking Nobara away, Mahito comes back in the picture and is sick of waiting, also excited because he recognizes Todo. So he charges forward to begin like attacking, but Todo begins to activate Boogie Woogie. And I love his technique because not only is it like a super himbo funny name for it, but it also is just probably one of the coolest techniques and one of the easiest ones to visualize. And is always animated really, really well in JJK. So just diving right into the clapping, and he's switching places with Mahito, with inanimate objects, with Yuji, and he's able to use it so well that it ensures that the fight remains really disorienting for Mahito, who even says something to that effect, like, no matter, like, man, I was like briefed on this and I still have no idea what's going on, which is exciting for him. That aside, Yuji right now is primarily only observing, but as Todo is like monologuing to him and enacting Boogie Woogie, he regains his strength to stand beside his braza, besto friendo. And then Todo rips off his shirt, because of course he does. Now that they're working on it together, do you think that they can kick Mahito's ass?
I mean, we've seen them work together before, so I love watching two characters. I honestly wish we could have gotten something like this for Tanjiro and Rengoku. Like, they got to work together once, but, like, you know, the growth of the characters in between the time, right? Because we saw Hanami working, you know, Hanami in season 1, and then all of a sudden, right now, we're seeing it again, and so it's really cool to see how the characters have changed since then. Can they kick Mahito's ass? That's a questionable thing. However, Todo ripping his shirt off? Yes, queen.
I mean, once again, I say, they know what they're doing. Those big muscles. Oh, man. Can they kick Mahito's ass? I think they can. I think that mostly due to what Todo can do, and his power is very, I think, a good match with Mahito because of the way his power works. So it's like, it's a good match. I think Yuji is definitely looking better and helpful, but he is still like, he's pretty down for the count, you know? He's not necessarily getting like a surge of power because of anger and trauma. He's just getting he's getting back into form because of Todo's words. So can they do it? I want to be hopeful. I feel like things are kind of like tipping in a good direction, and I know we're also getting close to the end of the season, so I'm like, yeah, where are we going? If anything happens to Todo, bro, I'm dropping the show. I'm saying it now. If anything happens to him, Brian.
I'm just kidding. I just had to do that to you. I'm sorry. It was too opportune not to.
Anytime any character comes on screen, you are my special.
Yeah, no, he if anything happens to him, I'm gonna be freaking pissed because man, this.
I'm gonna go back through and do like video edits of that, starting with Yuji's grandpa in episode 1. He's like, "Be strong." Turns on his side. You are my special.
Everything, every
Oh.
emotional moment. You are my special. I hope they can kick his ass. We'll see. I'm
I
trying
hope
to
so
not be too
too.
hopeful.
I hope so too. Not only because, like, obviously the fight needs to come to some kind of ending here. I think we only have 2 episodes left before we're done. Also, I just love seeing them together. Like, I love seeing Yuji and Todo, and I like Todo has another technique that can work really well against Mahito. I don't know if it's as good as Nobara's would have been against him, but between him and Yuji, I think that they do stand at least a chance of landing some damage for sure. So here's hoping. Can't wait to see a little bit more, but for right now, we do have to cut away from them momentarily because Mappa wants to break our hearts again. We cut away to see the rest of the Kyoto school, and we start with Miwa having her last interactions with Mekamaru. God damn it. He was born to shoujo, but forced to shonen. The sounds of her crying after he said goodbye had me so upset. And even his peers thinking that, like, he didn't trust them enough to not die. To be fair, they probably wouldn't be alive if they had gone to Shibuya, except for Todo, but like still, this whole scene just like broke my heart and brought us like right back to the beginning of the season again. I don't know. I feel so bad. And he was so cute and they were so cute together.
She never even like got to see that form fully. Like I just there's one thing, and when it comes to romance, when one person in that romance dies, I cannot do it. Like it is so heartbreaking to me. I cried multiple times during the show or during this episode, at the beginning of the episode and during this, because I could not take this scene. It was so depressing after all the depressing of this season to be reminded, because like Mekamaru's death was at the very beginning of the season. And like, yeah, it was difficult, but it was like a drop in the bucket compared to like Nanami and Nobara, and even like Gojo getting sealed, or even like the process of like the Geto and Gojo situation at the end of Hidden Inventory. Like I'm not gonna say like I wasn't upset. Like I remember being like I was so mad that Mekamaru died, but it wasn't like, oh, that's so sad. But now I'm like, frick, people loved him, you know? And it's just like, that's what gets me when it comes to character deaths. It's always the reaction of the people around them that like makes me just lose it. And so to see her just like, she just wanted to be with him. And then the way that they showed it, where she was crying after like saying her last goodbye, after like imagining him sitting next to her, and they show like the other members of the Kyoto school like listening to her cry. I think that was supposed to be like the end of the train, and Mia was like at the front of it. So like that's how loud her cries were, and they just had to stand there and like listen to it. And that's just like, oh my god.
Yeah, the scene was tough. I think I liked the most about this scene was the reflection of Mekamaru in the mirror. I thought that was so cool to see kind of him in the background as she said her final goodbyes. I think that was a really interesting detail that they brought together to make that happen, to make the scene kind of fully cohesive and like show the opportunity that was missed there. Kind of like what Hannah mentioned, that she never even saw his like true form. Like they did that right there as like a tease to the audience of like what could have been. So I think that was a really interesting play from Mappa. And Emily, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think they showed that reflection in the manga, did they?
I'd have to look again. I'm not sure. But either way, it really landed hard here, and
it sure did.
Clearly more than I remember it from the manga, because I didn't necessarily remember that, but this stuck with me because she never did get to see him except for maybe that flash of like, and who knows like what she thinks that she saw, or like what she actually saw, or what he was there with her, like I don't know, but like that particular shot really resonated. Yeah, this was definitely a hard scene. It's very hard to see like the aftermath of all the people that are like gonna miss them. It's like, you know, the phrase that like grief is love with nowhere to go. And that just sucks. Times at least 3 in the season so far. At least. Not good. but probably one of the more heart-wrenching in like a romantic love kind of way scenes that has happened in Jujutsu Kaisen. We don't get a lot of romantic love, which I actually kind of like about the show. I think it's interesting that it's a lot more like friendship and like companionship without, because again, I think that there is like a bad reputation for a lot of anime like sexualizing especially female characters, but I didn't feel like there was any, like, I don't feel like he felt that way about her. I felt like there was like a genuine like love connection, even if it was unrequited, because they just never spoke about it. So I thought that it was handled in a way that was really devastating because it was really nice and genuine. That sucks, but maybe we'll get to see some more of Miwa at least. Maybe trying to get some vengeance. Probably the rest of the Kyoto school too. I'm looking forward to that, although I'm not sure that that'll be this season because they're not there, which is probably in their best interest right at this moment. So we've seen Miwa and Mekamaru. Now we are going to go back to the fight with Todo, Yuji, and Mahito. And this fight is absolutely crazy. Again, we've seen fights with Mahito are just like absolutely nuts, but now there's like 3 different characters in the mix who all have extraordinarily strong and unique powers, and each of them keep leveling up with insane black flashes from Todo and Yuji. You've got like the soul multiplicity from Mahito. They are all giving at least 120% in this scene against each other. So I just wanted to save a couple minutes to just talk about this fight, which I think is also another incredible gem in our animators' crowns this season.
Yeah, this kind of sequence from here, watching them clap back at each other, quite literally, and kind of go off is really awesome. I think that the way that this was handled was really great. I thought watching kind of Yuji and Todo switch spots and watching kind of Mahito's reaction to getting somewhat of his ass kicked at certain points in this fight, because like he started to adapt a little bit, but even still, like they're still throwing him off a little bit. And so I felt like this episode really showed that like even though these villains are really strong and that like they have abilities, like they aren't infallible. And we saw that first with Nobara, and now we're seeing it kind of again with like his inability to match pacing. And even that and alone isn't, we've seen a lot of pacing fights before. We've seen anime like that. So knowing that there's a pacing issue between 2 people is going to be a little tough. So I think it's a really nice fight. I love the animation. It looked really great. There were some moments that I definitely saw were dim. So again, can't wait to go to Emily's house one day, watch the Blu-ray, because we know she's going to purchase it immediately. So I'm excited.
Yeah, we're gonna have a big watch party at Emily's after all this is said and done, so we can watch all of this without the dimming.
Go through all of it again, all the pain together.
Look, I have to do that again soon because I have to rewatch and binge with Jordan, so
Fair.
maybe this was a bad idea. Anyway, this fight was amazing. I mean, I really can't say much more than what Brian said. Just another huge shout out to these animators for continuing to put out such good work when we know their circumstances are not great. And it was really good to see Mahito kind of falter a little bit. Like, it's so satisfying to see him kind of be like, what? Like, because the beginning of this episode, he was like, for me, the beginning of this episode was the height of my hatred towards him as he just like beats on Yuji, who's just so broken. Like, that was not pleasant for me at all. So it's like, but I also have a hard time just seeing like any character that's just a sweet sunshine that like just genuinely always wants to do the right thing, just go through so much pain. So that's always like a very hard thing for me to watch. But to see like Todo and Yuji just working so well together that Mahito like is having to try, and he's very much like, wait, surprised by some moves. I think, at some points he kind of got the upper hand as well. I would have to rewatch the fight scene, but it was really well done. It was beautifully animated. The music was on point. The OST has been on point for this entire season. So great job to everyone involved, and I'm excited to see the last, I think it's 3 more episodes. I think the final episode is on the Thursday in between Christmas and New Year's. So
I hope it is 3. I think that we need it.
Yeah, I think it's this Thursday, and then the Thursday before Christmas, and the Thursday after Christmas.
And with that being said, if you have a suggestion of what you'd like us to cover next, let us know, because Just because JJK is over doesn't mean the Hashira Half Hour stop it. We've been tossing around the idea of Chainsaw Man before Emily got here. So, Emily, fun fact, we thought about doing Chainsaw Man, thought about doing Blue Lock, thought about doing Haikyuu. Lots of options on the table here, folks. Give us some comments below. Let us know what's up.
Yeah, we have like a 4-year gap when this ends before Demon Slayer starts. So we gotta find something else.
Wait, a 4-year gap?
I mean, oh my god, 4 months.
I was like, what did
4
you see on
years?
Twitter today that I didn't see?
Demon Slayer very delayed. No. 4-month gap till spring. So March or April.
Yes. Let us know. There's definitely some good shows out there that are new and exciting that are going to have more new seasons. We live in such a great time for anime. We get to see all this stuff come out. It's so cool. Anyway, yes, this fight with Mahito, Yuji, Todo is absolutely incredible. I love all of it, but like Mahito's like blast at the end where he's just like all those souls are like piling out of him was just so scary, and again like kind of Junji Ito like very like horrific. And at the same time, then you have like Todo, who is like having his epiphany or like his awakening moment, his resurrection. He is like piecing out almost, like all these colors flashing and flying, and he's like, my brother has gotten so strong since I first ran into him. Am I going to let myself fall behind? No. I'm going to rip off my shirt and power up. Which is exactly what we want to see from a character like Todo. So call it fan service, but like I love him and I want to see more of him. So very, very happy with how this is going so far. And this sequence again gave me some hope that hopefully the continuation of this fight next week will go well and will go in our favor. And maybe we can finally not feel pain and we can finally have what we want. Maybe I will get to open the podcast a different way. Wouldn't that be something?
That'd be so nice. Oh my gosh.
Well, it would be something, but we will have to wait and see. With that, this is actually where we leave off for this week, is like at the height of this fight for them. Any final thoughts on this episode before we move into our favorite moments? Sweet. Alrighty, well, I will go ahead and go first with my favorite moment, series of moments. I love everything Todo, but in particular, I've been laughing my ass off at everybody talking about him on Twitter like after the fact, because there was the one scene where Mahito had like both of his hands in like a grip, but then he like still somehow like clapped and got away all of a sudden. And so everyone was like, did he clap his ass cheeks to get away, or like what? Like how did he get out of that? And I can't stop thinking about it ever since somebody said it. If you go back and rewatch it, I'm like, I really don't know, but something clapped. So combination of like sometimes the internet is okay, and also I love Todo with my entire being. Love him, love him, love him.
I think my favorite moment is really funny, and it's like I think 2 or 3 just very simple moments is whenever we're like in Nita's point of view and Todo keeps calling Yuji his brother, and Nita's just like, I don't recall him having a younger brother, and then he sees Yuji and he's like, they look nothing alike. He was just taking the comment of Buraza so seriously, and he's like, they're brothers. I feel see all the things to be thinking. That brought me like a lot of joy in a very tough time of JJK viewing. So thank you, Nita, for being confused. Relatable.
Yeah, I think my favorite moment is a little bit more melancholy. It was definitely Mekamaru in the window. Like, that was just so well placed. I thought that was an amazing moment. Second runner-up, though, is definitely Todo in, like, the universe just, like, powering up. Like, that was hilarious. Like, among the stars, it kind of gave me Anya Starlight throw vibes. And I was like, what's going on? But except, like, he did a little bit better than Anya.
Well, it's canon that Yuji and Anya are siblings, right? So
this is true. This is true.
So, and Todo's his brother, so he's her bigger brother. Something like that.
There you go.
Big
and don't forget, both Todo and Yuji went to nationals together, and they won for their middle school. I'm just kidding. That's not true. Yuji denies it consistently.
Aw. Yuji, let him have
Oh.
one. Oh, we love him. I can't wait to see some more of him. He really is like one of my favorite side characters in the show, and I hope that he's not a side character forever, because I just think, like, again, he's like so strong and so cool, but also so funny and brings like a lot of light to an otherwise pretty dark show. So he's just like a breath of fresh air, and I love him. On that note, it is time to move into our Shibuya era secret. So I read an interesting interview to prepare for this, but did you know that Jujutsu Kaisen, according to Gege, is most directly influenced by Bleach? And I found this out because there's a really interesting interview with, and please forgive me on this pronunciation if I get it wrong, but I believe his name is Tite Kubo, the mangaka for Bleach, and the conversations between him and Gege of JJK, of course. And it's so funny to me the way that artists inspire each other, because when Gege starts the interview by bringing up that Bleach directly inspired him for this, Kubo goes on to say, like, don't you mean Mr. Togashi inspired you? Because Togashi is the author of Hunter, Hunter, and Yu Yu Hakusho, and it, you know, and that like directly inspired Bleach to come into existence. And if we got Togashi on the line, he probably would say, like, oh, don't you mean like the Dragon Ball guy inspired you? Because like it's just like such a tiered thing. And I just think it's like really funny how artists inspire each other, but how cool that they get to have a dialogue with somebody who inspired them so much that is still alive. And Gege went on to say, like, yeah, that's pretty funny, but you're right. Also, Evangelion. So there's our answer for the Mechamaru fight. Oh, man. All right, guys, that's all the time we have for this week. We hope you enjoyed this episode and that you'll come back next week. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the bell on YouTube, give us a download of the podcast if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, and you can follow us on there. Give us a nice rating if you've enjoyed what you've heard. That always helps us to be found by some other people that might also be interested. You can also give us a follow on TikTok and Instagram at Hashira Half Hour, and we are on X, formerly Twitter, at Hashira Half. Until next week, no imo.
Yo, imo.
Yo, I know.